Again, a warm welcome to each and every one of you, and thank you for joining us again. I'd like to recap from our last week's presentation, and we spoke a lot about the SDK, or I emphasized a lot about the power of the SDK through the Geotab system. And today we've got Steve Beer with us, founder and CEO of FleetIT, and this is one of the platforms that have taken full advantage of the open platform through our SDK. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Steve to introduce himself and obviously let us run through the presentation. Steve, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and the floor is yours.
Cool, perfect. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks all the guys at Geotab. Welcome, everyone. Hope you found our presentation enjoyable and beneficial. If there's any questions during the presentation, feel free to post them and we'll get to them at the end. We do have a time allocated for questions. We've also got some questions at the end to help in case you're nervous to ask anything. We've suggested a couple questions just to make it easier. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the presentation.
Please take note while Steve's sharing his presentation, this is a recorded webinar, and just like the previous webinar, we will be sharing the recording when required.
All right, perfect. Hope everyone can see that. All right, perfect. So I think today, our product that we've built and taken to market is a product called FleetIT, which is a fleet maintenance and administration software. And I'll explain a bit more detail as to exactly what that is and how it works. And today's really just to walk through that and also more importantly, how it can be coupled with telematics, specifically your Geotab platform. And we're going to do that by identifying 6 reasons why you should be implementing a fleet maintenance and administration software. You might already have something in place. You might have procedures in place to manage it. But we hope that a system like this will help make things simpler and easier for you to run the administration and maintenance of your fleet. And that's what we're all about, is simplifying fleet administration. Our ultimate goal is to make your fleet admin as simple as possible. It's not there to duplicate things. It's there to eliminate the need for whiteboards to track when things are due, spreadsheets that might have broken formulas in them, and loads of fleet files that once it goes into the file, you probably never pull it out until you sell that vehicle. And on that note, we've got quite an interesting story. We had a customer we implemented a while ago that we asked them to send us all the historical information to load them into the system. And we got nothing for 4 days, and all of a sudden we got a courier arrive at our door with 2 boxes filled with files of a copy of every single invoice related to their 65 vehicles, which we then had to capture and use to implement it. We did charge a little bit extra for that, but the reality is that that's how a lot of people, that's the best resources a lot of people have in terms of managing their fleet and managing the historical expenses and information around their fleet. And you can imagine, and if that is where you guys, any of you are in, that makes it really difficult to make informed decisions around how can I save money, how can I do things better, what's costing me more in my fleet, what is my actual true cost per kilometer, what is my total cost of ownership for my vehicles, and when is the right time for me to look at selling vehicles, when should I extend them, when can I, what assets do I sweat and what assets don't I. So the system's really built around that, and a lot of what we do is what we will be doing. And the nice thing about it is we've got all our own in-house development. So we're always deving and creating new features every single month, and a lot of that is focused around what our customers want. So what benefits you as a fleet manager to make better decisions around your fleet. And you'll see as we go through that we're either have already created a lot of stuff that will speak to what your needs are, as well as we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline that's just going to make it easier and easier for you. We're then going to just touch on, just to give you a bit of a difference between what is the difference between a fleet management software or a telematics software like Geotab and the difference between a fleet administration software like FleetIT. There are a few overlaps in certain areas, not much in terms of what FleetIT does that copies what a telematics platform does, but some of your telematics rules and functionality does cross over a little bit into the fleet administration side, but there is quite a clear difference. And the main thing is that your telematics system is there to focus on the operational fleet measurements to drive improvements, efficiencies, and savings. Whilst the administration software is the capturing of the financial and technical information behind the running of the fleet. And it's there to identify the areas of concerns or opportunities and highlight the financial impact of the operational measurements. So to put that in a bit more layman's terms, the Geotab device, as a sort of example, the Geotab device is installed and driver scorecards are implemented with incentives. FleetIT is used to monitor the change in the fleet CPK, fuel consumption, and total cost of ownership once you've implemented this, and the impact of the poor or good driving has on the maintenance of the asset. So if you've got a vehicle that's showing significant amounts of speeding exceptions, what is that doing to the fuel economy, not only of your fleet, or not only of that vehicle, but of your total fleet? When you've got a vehicle that's having a high number of harsh brakings, are those harsh brakings impacting the increased maintenance on brakes, shocks, tires, and anything else that it might be impacting? And that's the where the two systems really tie into each other. And that's why it's so vital, as I'm sure you're all aware, to have a good tracking of your maintenance and your costs tied into the telematics platform and Geotab specifically. Cool. So yeah, that just gives you a quick 1-minute overview of what the system is, if my previous slides didn't really explain it well enough. We're now going to go into those 6 reasons that we touched on earlier. And there we go. So one of the first main elements around FleetIT and the benefit of implementing it is having a system that allows integrations to eliminate duplications. A lot of people are scared that by implementing another system into their solution, it means duplication of work. It means another function that someone has to do, and possibly even another head that needs to be employed. And that's really not the case. Hopefully you already have functions capturing some sort of information. But also a key thing around FleetIT is that it is an open platform, very much like Geotab. And that's how we've been able to very easily integrate with Geotab. We're also able to integrate with things like fleet cards, so that we can pull through all your fuel transactions as they're happening. We're busy with an integration at the moment with a customer that has, with a product that will allow us to pull through Bowser fill-ups directly into the system. And then things like accounting software. So we're busy with another customer now that as soon as the maintenance expense is captured on FleetIT, it'll automatically create the supplier invoice in their accounting package. Or the other way around is once the supplier invoice or the PO is created in the accounting software, it automatically creates the maintenance expense in FleetIT. Really depends on where you want to drive your functioning. This also helps to eliminate the need for maybe a fleet person having access to other systems that they might not have full access to but allows them to do a full feature of managing the fleet. And the opportunities are endless. As long as we can integrate with really anything that's around, it's really about the other system. If that's open source or if that's got some sort of an API, we can do it. But even on a very simple form, we've also got a bulk importing tool for pretty much every aspect of our system. So at the very least, you can copy the information, you can pull a report from one system, copy it into our importer and import it within a few seconds, and that will be able to allow you to capture it. So it doesn't mean that you have to go and capture tons and tons of information that's already been captured somewhere else.
Steve, that's so interesting. And you brought up a point by saying an open platform. And I just want you to elaborate a little bit more. How easy was it for your developers to work with the Geotab SDK?
So I mean, completely simple. To be honest, I don't think, I mean, Geotab didn't even know we had done the integration. We came to them once it was complete and let them know that, or let you guys know that we had now integrated with you. So we had access to the SDK software, the SDK site, and my dev team literally pulled up what they needed and they ran a few tests through the test base. And within I think a day or so, we had the odometer readings pulling through. And that's what we currently do in terms of the Geotab integration, is we pull through the odometer readings from the Geotab into the FleetIT software, so that so even if you're not capturing things regularly, you're still at least getting odometer readings captured in FleetIT, so that it drives the notifications for things like maintenance reminders, tire rotations, different things like that. But the system will always trust the captured odometer reading. So if you capture a maintenance expense, we assume that, and that odometer reading is higher than what comes out of the Geotab platform, that's how you'll also be able to start identifying the variances between your GPS odo and your actual dashboard odo. And another integration we've done is also the FleetIT software is actually able to be a tab within my Geotab. So you can not have to play between different systems. It's a complete iframe into Geotab. So underneath, I think normally it's put in underneath, I think the activity button or something like that. There'll be a button that says FleetIT. You press that and you'll have full functionality of the system inside the My Geotab software, which makes it really easy for you, for your fleet administrators and users to just use both systems together. And we can do so much more. So there's so many more things. The Geotab SDK is literally lets us do anything we want. So if you want us to pull certain information into FleetIT or the other way around, it's a matter of simply asking and we'll most likely be able to do it.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And that's just build on from the last week's webinar, where it's this one sign-on system for the customer to make it so much more streamlined and that information pulling through on one system. Thank you.
Cool, no problem. So I see my images take a while to load. Cool. The next and probably one of the most important elements is the ability to easily capture and track and analyze all fleet-related costs, and that speaks to every element of your fleet and of your assets. So fuel and oil, the ability to pull, as we mentioned just now, pulling through your fuel transactions into FleetIT, or manually capturing if that's something you want to do. That will help. We have triggers that will allow you to set what your target fuel economy is. And as soon as you exceed that fuel economy, you can get a notification, so you can investigate for any theft, any poor driving, what is causing you to be breaking your fuel targets or fuel economy targets. And we've also created a notification to allow you to identify anything that's more than 30% less than your target, which should highlight things like capturing errors, maybe theft. So guys pulling through little mileage, taking fuel and punching through city mileages. That the system's there to identify not only the expense and where your money's going, but also to help you pick up things like theft and fraud around your fuel and oil, which we know happens all over the place. Maintenance expenses, so the ability to capture all your maintenance expenses from a line item level. You'll be able to capture it. And we also, when you're capturing it, you'll identify both an expense type and an expense category. We've also built a system in a way that allows us to, if one customer captures a specific expense type, so let's say, for instance, left brake pad, it doesn't mean that someone else now has to go in and create left brake pad as a type of expense before they can capture against it. The idea is it's a shared knowledge system. So we're always doing it. And we also have a back-end function that checks that there's not left brake pad spelled 40 different ways in the system. There's only one version of it. And this allows us ultimately to get to a point that allows you to trend the information better. So trend your category of your tire categories or your alternator category, battery categories, so that you can really see where your costs are going with that. And also so that you can identify any mismanagement around those products. So maybe people stealing tires, stealing batteries, different things like that within your organization, which we've seen happening. It also allows you to pull specific reports around specific categories. So you can pull a maintenance report on a specific category instead of pulling a total report and then having to sift through the data to see the actual category. Brakes and tires is a no-brainer. It's probably some people's biggest expense and biggest risk. There's still no great solution in the market that identifies a way to eliminate tire theft. And That's quite important. All right. And our brakes and tires module, we're busy launching a new version to it. Currently, it's captured as a maintenance expense, but we will also, our new feature will allow you to capture the position of your brakes, track the life cycle of your tires, so position of your tires, capture the life cycle of your tires, along with not only the tires, but of the actual things like retreading and the casings of the actual tires. So you can start tracking casings if that's something that you manage. Or at a very basic level, you can just track the actual brand and how many kilometers you're getting on a specific brand. Tolls is another great one. So that's used to, obviously there's a lot of fraud going around clone cards, things like that. So pulling through your toll activity against, and then comparing it to your telematics activity should help you identify if there's any fraud going around that. And then your fixed costs. Your fixed costs are really great in terms of all your other costs that come in. So that we capture your purchase price, and you can choose how you purchase your vehicle. Did you finance it? Have you bought it outright? If you bought it outright, how do you depreciate your assets? And that depreciation cost pulls through every single month automatically without you having to capture anything. The same goes for a leased asset. Other things are like subscriptions. Once you capture a subscription, every month that cost will recur and capture itself into FleetIT. So you don't have to capture it every single month. And accessories. Let's say you purchase something new for a vehicle, so a tail lift or something like that. You can capture that accessory into FleetIT, the cost of that accessory, so that pulls through. But also what's really cool is you can also manage the warranties and service schedules around those accessories. So if you have a tail lift that needs to be serviced every 3 months, you can set that in the accessory section on that accessory, and it'll then notify you when that accessory is due for a service over and above when the vehicle is due. And then drivers. So drivers is obviously a big element of all vehicles because they're needed to make the vehicles move, and you can capture your drivers in the system from identifying their PDPs, permits, and driver's license, which we'll touch on just now, and also just the cost of those drivers. You can pull through the actual cost of the driver into your CPK. Now, we've got a really great CPK breakdown expense report, which will give you the cost across all these different categories and what the CPK is by section. So what is your CPK just on your drivers, and your total CPK when you include your drivers, as an example?
Steve, sorry, I don't want to spend too much time on this question. We're already halfway through our time already. And but the historical expenses on a vehicle, how is that captured, or how do you get that into the system?
So obviously you're capturing in terms of historical expenses. We're about to launch in a week's time. We're launching a new cool feature that when you're capturing an expense and you select a category, a pop-up button will appear that will allow you to review all the historical expenses on that vehicle in that category. So let's say alternator as an example, it'll list up a little pop-up modal that will give you all the historical alternator expenses against that vehicle, which will help you identify whether you've got, whether you're spending too much on the new alternator, whether you're replacing it too frequently, amongst many other things that you would obviously know that you could trend against that. And that goes both from a capturing perspective, but as well as when you're reviewing the maintenance expense as well.
Fantastic, brilliant. I'll allow you to continue, and I'll hold my questions to the end. Thanks.
Great, cool. CPK. This is the core around why you would use a system, is the CPK and total cost of ownership management. So a big thing is tracking your accurate CPK compared against your fleet mileage and age helps drive improvements and efficiencies. So our asset grid will show you what your current CPK is on your fleet, the statuses, as well as the current mileage. And that will help you identify if there's issues. So for example, a high mileage vehicle with a high CPK, higher than normal CPK, means that we need to start considering either disposing of that asset or putting it onto a route that is doing a lot less mileage because it's starting to cost you too much to run that vehicle. The same as if you've got a low mileage vehicle with a high CPK, it means that you need to start looking at doing some change. You're not utilizing that asset efficiently, and you need to start looking at better ways to utilize the asset now that you've got the new vehicle, which could mean getting rid of the vehicle that's got the high CPK, obviously, and molding routes or blending routes if that's something you're able to do. The other big part about this is if you do any charge outs, which most people would do, you can now understand exactly what your true CPK is across all the cost elements, as we mentioned in the previous slide, to highlight, to make sure that you're charging out correctly when you're billing your customers. And that's vital to make sure that you run a profitable business, obviously. And then comparing your most expensive assets against each other, understanding exactly what is contributing to their total cost of ownership, and allows for changes to extend the fleet life cycle. So one of our dashboard images will show you your top 5 most expensive assets, but not only just show you what they are, it shows it in a stacked graph, which will allow you to see what costs are actually contributing to that. And you can then also, our dashboards are interactive, so you can then remove certain cost types or cost categories and see how that impacts it, and if it still shows that as the most expensive vehicle. So you can remove, for instance, your finance costs and your purchase costs, because maybe you know that you bought a more expensive asset, and then just compare the fuel and maintenance and tire costs against that, and see if it's still making it the most expensive asset. Then move to virtual document storage. So the system caters for you to store all your documents in here. So we spoke about the story the other day with regards to the files that we received. This should eliminate the need for you to store, to manage everything through your files. You don't need to look at the file again once you put the document away there. Everything can be scanned and stored into the system. And that both includes things like your vehicle documents, so e-natus docs, finance agreements, lease agreements, right through to on a driver's side, anything that like a copy of the driver's license, a copy of the ID document. We all have permits currently out at the moment with regards to the COVID restrictions, and you can store those permits on FleetIT so that they're easy to access if there's ever an issue going around that driver or that vehicle specifically, right through to the invoice around an expense. And images around an expense. So you can actually take photographs of different things and then store those photographs onto the system. And the opportunities are endless in terms of what information you can store into the system so that you can have a true history around it. So we've also got a really cool feature that allows you to, when you're disposing an asset, there's a download button on the asset grid that will pull through all the maintenance information and all the asset documents, all the maintenance documents and all the asset documents, so that you can provide a file with a virtual service history when you're getting rid of the assets, which obviously will just help you drive a higher price on the sale of that asset. Driver management, I touched on that a little bit just now, but you're able to load all your drivers into the system. You're able to capture things like their birth date, cell phone numbers, their cost to company, if you want to make that something that's available in the system. And then obviously their expiry dates on things like driver's license, PDPs, working permits. And we've got the ability to expand on it. So if you've got specific permits, we can add those into the system so that you can track those permits as also potentially mines that have a specific permit for a mine, or a hazmat permits, different things like that. And the system will then drive notifications, which I'll touch on on the next slide, on these rules, so that you're always managing them. You can also link drivers to specific vehicles, and that's how we pull through the cost. So if you capture a cost to company on a driver, if you link a driver to a vehicle, the system checks every single day what driver is loaded to linked to a vehicle, and then pulls through their daily cost. So it calculates their daily cost for the month and pulls that through into the fleet cost at the end of the day. And then the next thing, which is really cool, is our notifications and fleet status management. So anything that you capture a mileage or a date element to will trigger a notification. So that could include things like vehicle licenses due for renewal, vehicles that need to be booked in for services, warranties expiring, maintenance plans expiring, tire rotations due, tire replacements due, right through to mileage limits. So if you are on a lease of a vehicle, if you're leasing your vehicle, obviously you don't have to capture all the maintenance costs because it's part of your lease price, but you will often have mileage limits around your lease contract, and you can set up alerts to notify you when that vehicle is doing more than certain mileage on a day, on a month, on a year, or even on the contract term, depending how you structure your deals, so that you can make sure that you're never in a situation where you're getting a massive bill at the end because you overused an asset that you're leasing, which makes the lease model almost too expensive when it was there to probably save you money on purchasing if that was a decision you made as a business. And then we have a really cool health status. So every administrator in the system gets a health status at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it lists all their vehicles with the current mileage, the current CPK, the current status. So what vehicles are in service, what vehicles are active, what vehicles are due for service, and then the statuses of vehicle licenses, COFs, warranties, and service and maintenance plans. So every morning, the fleet manager has the opportunity to quickly check, are there any things due for service? Do I have any licenses that are expired? Do I have any COFs, any warranties, or any maintenance plans? What percentage of my fleets are sitting in expired and not expired? And that can just help you in making your decisions in terms of managing your fleet a little bit better. Brilliant. So then we go into some questions. Ryan, you said you maybe had a few more questions for me before I touched on the ones asked. We sort of
No,
forward,
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Steve. And looking at the questions I've written down here, and at one of the slides, is there any limitations on the amount of documents and types of documents that are able to be stored in FleetIT?
So currently we just have a limitation on the size of the document. It's for no specific reason other than that's just what we set when we built the system. So it's currently set at a 5 gigabyte file. So you can have as many files as you want. The specific file is a limit on 5 gigabytes. Now that's not something that's cast in stone. It's not impossible for us to increase that. So if, for instance, you wanted to maybe pull through a video evidence of a accident, we could potentially say, okay, well, we could, if that request comes, we can increase the file size to accommodate for a specific video file onto there. Obviously, if it gets abused and we use too much space, we might have to look at management tools around that. If a specific customer is using up too much storage, because you should have another platform that's managing the video files, for instance. So it's not there to keep every video file, but one video file for an accident is easy for us to store.
Fantastic, brilliant. Another one I've jotted down here, obviously Geotab Africa has got a very strong mining vertical, and you said, especially within the mining sector, that you could put different forms of permits on FleetIT. Again, what forms of permits, or is it obviously customer's choice?
Yeah, so I mean, we've tried not to create a free form option that just allows you to type lots of that stuff, because we ultimately want the system to be trendable. So we want you to be able to trend things. So it's as simple as asking us. So if you need us to create a specific permit into the system, we can generally do it. It's not a lot of dev work for us. It's not a lot of effort to do it. It's just a matter of understanding what it is that we need and then putting it in there. We are cognizant of not having a library of 100 different permit types as well. So we would, see how we could get around it if you had lots of permits, but there's no reason why we can't capture as many permits as you want. And just, you touched on the mines there. We do have vehicles going out to mines, and the system works great in the mining market because it will help you. We can also, tracking things like your Bowser fill-ups at the mines, because fuel, there's obviously a high fuel usage there. Again, and obviously just understanding, it wouldn't be a cost per kilometer, but cost per hour in terms of the mines. Pulling through all those costs and understanding a true cost per hour is really important when it comes to our mining customers.
Brilliant. I'm going to allow you to continue with your slide. I'm now going to also open to any of the delegates who'd like to ask questions. Please feel free to go put it in there. But yeah, Steve, you may continue.
Brilliant. Okay, perfect. So in terms of a few questions that we proposed or that we thought you might want to ask is what kind of customer would use this product? Is it only for your big fleets? What kind of fleets are there to use it? And the idea and the real answer around it is it doesn't really matter. We have customers that have 5 vehicles, and then we have customers that have more than 1,000 vehicles. The system is geared to really handle any size of fleets, and it doesn't. And the pricing model is geared towards accommodating the different sizes of fleets as well, which I'll touch on just now. But yeah, any fleet size you bring it in, because the needs are the same. You still have the same needs regardless of how many vehicles you have in your fleet. In terms of how you use it, is another big question we got asked, which we have touched on a bit, in terms of integrations and capturing. But another key element is we also put a lot of effort in terms of implementation of our customers. For us, we want our customers to get the most value out of the system. We don't like a drop, sending you a login details and say, well, good luck, let us know if you have any questions. It's important for us to make sure that your information is implemented properly so that you're actually getting value out of the system and you're actually seeing efficiencies and seeing cost savings in your fleet by implementing FleetIT. In terms of cost, obviously that's a real important factor, especially at the moment. So FleetIT Pro, which is our full version, which is everything we've spoken about here, starts at 60 Rand per vehicle per month. And that will include any additional modules we're adding on. So I mentioned we're separating a separate tire module. That'll be part of your standard package. We're also launching our workshop module by the end of the year, where you'll be able to capture all your inventory and create POs, and that from FleetIT. And do your entire workshop management inside FleetIT, and that will also be part of the standard FleetIT Pro package. So it'll never really go more than 60 Rand a month. And if you've got fleets of more than 200, we're open to discussions around discounted pricing packages. We also have a FleetIT Lite package, which we've made free to all Geotab customers for the rest of 2020, which will give you it won't allow you to capture any of the cost elements into FleetIT, but it will pull through the Geotab integration for your mileage and initiate any of the notifications that come out. So things like services due, license renewal due, tire rotations, mileage limits, all of that sort of stuff. And that's a free service that we're offering to you with an easy ability to upgrade to the full package once you want it. Further to that, we understand everyone is in a really tough position in terms of adding on costs at the moment, and we're very flexible around talking around that. If you need, we want you on the system. So if you need to if you can't accommodate an additional cost now, we can still look at a structure on getting you on and working it out in the future. So have the discussion with us at the end of the day. And then whether there's any fixed contracts. So that's an easy one. There's absolutely not. We don't have any hardware linked to the product. So we're able to offer the product on a month-to-month basis. You literally can cancel at any time should you ever feel the need to. Any other questions?
Yes, we've got a couple of questions from the delegates. First one, Eric, thank you for yours. His question is, how does the system interact with Stanek and their reporting that is already available?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of Stanek, so we currently do imports through this with the Stanek data for customers that are running Stanek. We do have quite a few customers that are on Stanek. At the end of the day, the Stanek gives you a lot in terms of how you manage your fleet, but it doesn't give you everything that FleetIT's going to give you. And at the price point, a lot of customers still use FleetIT even though they've got Stanek. We are also busy working with Stanek in terms of doing a back-end integration so that there won't even be the need to do a file import, even though it takes like less than a minute. We're busy working on a backward integration with them, and they are open to it. So we're just busy understanding the dynamics behind it, and hopefully that will launch shortly as well.
Fantastic. Eric, I hope that answers your question. Another question from Eric. Does the system communicate directly to the drivers, for example, tire rotation?
At the moment, I mean, we don't have any hardware linked to the product, right? So there's no device in the system. We could look at if you have obviously the notifications come out, and those notifications can go to the driver so that he knows that he needs to do it if you've got a remote fleet that works around the country. So currently our notifications that are all based merely more around emailed notifications, identifying them, telling them to do something, or looking at the actual at the vehicle. But there's no I'm not sure if the drivers run smartphones or anything like that. But we could also look at the possibilities are there that maybe we could look at an integration with Geotab where it pulls it through if there's a Garmin in the vehicle, as an example.
Very much so. I was just going to build onto it to say to Eric is that is the power of the Geotab system, whereby we could take on those information and push it through to the driver console that is within the driver, and obviously asking them to action it. But to answer the question, I think yes, we could get that message if that is a requirement, Eric. Fantastic. A question from Georgia quickly. What is the lifespan for a virtual document storage on the system?
So we don't have we don't delete anything at this point in time. So what's on the system stays on the system. There's really no need for us to delete it, and we will increase our server capacities in line with what the customers want. So obviously, as I mentioned in this on that slide, is that we'll monitor abuse. So if someone's loading a video file every single day onto every single one of their 100 vehicles, we may have to have a discussion around that, because that's not what it's really built for. But in terms of documents, the size of the documents, we don't have any limitations around that, and there won't be a deletion of any of those documents. So again, the answer is there's no limits, but if there is abuse, we may have to look at it, or may have to look at a different structure around that, which we have got solutions we could look at for that as well.
Fantastic. All right, brilliant. Is there any other questions from the delegates that would like to come through? Doesn't look like any is coming through at this point in time. I would like to take the time to thank each and every one of you. Steve Buer, thank you so much for your time and for your informative presentation. We did run over a little bit of our time, but I think it was very informative. As I said at the start of the webinar, this is a recorded webinar and it can be shared with all delegates at a later stage. Thank you so much for your time, and we will be chatting soon. Should you guys require any more information on FleetIT or Geotab, please do not hesitate to contact either your key account manager through the Geotab or contact Geotab directly for more information. Fantastic. Have a fantastic day further, and we will see each other next week again. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.